Welcome to Thursday Checkdown. I'm your host, Greg Kellogg, and the host with the most, Tipp Major. Tipp, I'm not calling you co-host anymore. This is as much your show as mine. You're booking the guests just like I am. How you doing tonight, buddy?
I'm doing well, Greg. I'm doing great, man. I'm excited about our guest, Gladys, man. This is going to be cool. I've talked to her on social media, but I've never really actually got to speak with her until just a few minutes ago. So this is going to be really fun, man. I'm excited about players that we have to avoid in our fantasy football drafts. Usually here at the Sports Affiliation, we're very positive people. We love the positivity, but we're going to get a little negative today, man. We got to get a little negative.
Not really negative. We're positively telling you not to draft these guys.
There you go.
Every week during the season last year, we did a segment said studs to sit, which was basically if he's top 12 or top 24 for running back wide receiver, they're typically starters. And we picked out at a 75% clip rate of being right,
we were on fire.
These studs to sit. Well, I figured why not do it in the preseason, kind of preview what we're going to do during the regular season. But we're saying these are players that for one reason or another, we would not recommend that you draft. Now, everybody's got their own league rules. Things are different. But you mentioned Gladys. We're going to bring Gladys on right now. Gladys Louise Tyler. How you doing, Gladys?
I'm doing good.
Gladys is a co-host on a podcast, a Going for Two live podcast. Now, Going for Two kind of struck at my heart because when I got back involved in this, I'm bouncing around Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, and I found this chat channel for content creators. It's run by a guy named Jeff Lambert. Jeff, he spells his name weird. I got a brother named Jeff. He spells it Geoff, whereas almost everybody in the free world spells it Jeff. But Jeff's a good guy, and he runs Going for Two. And is he on the podcast with you, Gladys?
No, Jeff's not on any of the podcasts I do. I guess on his podcast last night, actually.
Okay, so you deal with him. He's really a good guy.
He's a great guy. Jeff is a great guy.
And he also runs a Discord. Now, I know a lot of people hate Discord. I really understand that. I'm in 3 Discords. I'm in the Sports Affiliation Discord. I'm in Jeff's Going for Two Discord. And I'm in Bob Lung's Fantasy Football Expo Discord. Now, I really advise you to get into all 3 of those. And the reason I say that, Jeff actually ran a bunch of Scott Fish Bowl mock drafts, which really helped prepare me for the Scott Fish Bowl, my live draft, although I did get sniped 3 times in it. I did it live in Houston. If you can do a live draft, man, do it. It's so much fun. If you can get to the expo, do it. Gladys, where can people find your work before we get too deep into this?
So I write on the Going for Two site, usually about redraft. I am saying a lot. And I write for Gridiron Experts on betting. And I do some defensive work for Rasball.
Yeah, so, you need to get over here with the Sports Affiliation because Iggy and JC.
I love Iggy.
Well, they're building up a really great betting, daily fantasy sports props. They do it in their Discord. Need to get you as part of our Discord. And you don't have to be just isolated at the reason I love Sports Affiliation. You can keep doing everything you're doing. Just come into our chats and, you got a prop bet, mention it. We'll put it up for you and we'll credit you with it. I mean, we'd love to see more of you, Gladys. We need strong women in the industry. I actually started the oldest women's only fantasy football league back in the 90s, and it's still running today. And I got to say, I've been pretty blessed in this. And, I married my wife when I was 21 and she was 17. I started dating her when she was 14.
Are you from the South?
Michigan. She's Hispanic. She was basically in my study hall. My senior year, her freshman year, she was in study hall with me. And she had this long, dark hair. She's Mexican beauty, brown eyes. And I come from a small farm town. We had no black people at all in our school. We had maybe 6 Mexican families, no, all white. She was most exotic thing I'd ever seen. We've been married 48 years in December.
Oh my God, congratulations. That's awesome.
Greg.
Well, what's awesome is her, not me. I mean, she stuck with me.
Look, Gladys, everybody, I've met Janie. Janie is a wonderful lady. Greg is really lucky, guys. Greg is that's all I'm gonna say. Greg is very lucky because look, Janie has aged so well. Like, she is. When I first saw Janie, I was like, okay, Greg.
Yeah. Tipp, this is a true statement, Tipp. God looks after children and fools. I get a double benefit because I've never grown up and nobody's ever accused me of being wise other than marrying her. It was the smartest thing I ever did. Anyway, as Tipp alluded to, we're going to talk about players that we don't think you should draft, and there's a variety of reasons. One of mine, I'm going to take heat for. I've been taking heat for it all week in Twitterverse. I'm okay with that. But I think we want to do this a little differently. Normally, I jump in because I like to talk, but I think we're going to let our guest go first and then Tipp, and then I'll go last. I'll bring up the last one because I know that Gladys has not sniped any of my picks, but she might have sniped one or two of Tipp's, and I want to see how well he does in adjusting on the run. Now, we can have the same players, just doubles up. And I know Tipp and I have the same player, but he's kindly decided to go with my second player at that position. He thought I was going to take this player because I really like Michigan players. So anyway, Gladys, who's your quarterback that you're avoiding?
I'm avoiding CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud's going right now as quarterback 5. He's going in the early 5th round, according to Fantasy Pros. CJ Stroud ended last year as QB 11, I believe, and he has no rushing upside. So he had 23 passing touchdowns. In order for him to maintain that, he's going to have 23 or more passing touchdowns. I'm sorry. He's going to have 23 or more passing touchdowns again. Second year, people have film on him. I think that he might hit that 23 mark. But if you're telling me I can wait to the 7th round and get Dak Prescott, who has the rushing upside, who you think, spoiler alert, who has players, he doesn't have a running game. They don't have a running game. They didn't do anything to get their running game in Dallas. They're going to have to be chucking that ball all
Wait
day
a minute,
long.
wait a minute. They got that little kid. Deuce
Deuce
Vaughn.
Yeah, Deuce Vaughn, Dowdle, and Grandpa. So, yeah, I'm going to stick with that. No running game.
I like that.
Thanks. If I can get Dak, and I can get Jaden Daniels, or I can get Joe Burrow, or I can get Jordan Love, the return on my investment is going to be better than having to reach for CJ Stroud and hope that Stephon Diggs brings in more touchdown passes this year.
Mason Riney loves your pick. And if you don't know who Mace is, he was my co-host before Tipp. He had to back away for personal reasons. Tipp has filled in, not admirably. Tipp is no longer a co-host. He is the host of this show.
And he's a great dad, apparently.
Oh, he is.
Oh, yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Yeah.
All right. So that is a surprising pick. Tipp, can you top it?
You know what? She actually talked about the guy that I'm going to pick, and it's Dak Prescott. Because for the simple fact, yeah, you can wait a couple rounds later and get him, but I'd rather wait even maybe a round or two after that and get somebody like a Trevor Lawrence, somebody like a Justin Herbert. It's the reason I'm going to say this about Dak Prescott is there's several reasons. We already know the contract situation that he's going through. Now you have CeeDee Lamb with the contract situation. I know we're going to talk about CeeDee Lamb soon. And not only that, he also had the boot situation when he was out on vacation and he just showed up with the boot. Somebody took a video or a picture of it. I think there's a little bit more to there than you just don't show up on vacation wearing the boot. So I think there's a lot going on there.
Explain. He's a cowboy. Cowboys wear boots and hats. You're not talking about cowboy boots.
I'm not talking about because I would have said cowboy. I'm talking about a walking boot, like some type of
like a broken ankle boot,
like a boot that you need because you have some sort of ailment. There we go.
There you go.
Now I will say this: the offensive line there in Dallas too is a little of a red flag for me. And the reason I'll say that is because we've known Dallas. We've known they always are drafting for the trenches. They still have Zach Martin there, right? I love Zach Martin. I think he's a great player as a guard position. But other than that, their offensive line has dwindled down a bit. And you factor that in with a running game that leaves much to be desired. I get it. They're probably going to be throwing the ball a lot more. But if you have situations with CeeDee Lamb, you got situations with the offensive line, you got maybe a foot situation or an ankle issue as well, contract disputes, it just looks like it's all about to crumble down for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, I understand their defense as well is not going to be as good as it probably was with Dan Quinn, but I'm out on Dak because I'd rather wait a few rounds later and get somebody like a Trevor Lawrence where, yeah, maybe he didn't have the greatest year last year, but I see a lot more upside for Trevor Lawrence this year. What about you, Greg?
I actually like your other option better because he's got the ball coach, and I like the ball coach quite a bit. And for those that don't know, the ball coach is Jim Harbaugh. So I like the Justin Herbert shot. For me, I expect my picks to draw a lot of hate from this episode. I'll say it up front. I'm going with the quarterback that does have rushing upside. I'm going with Kyler Murray. Now, I got my notes here, and I got to go to them because I don't remember like I used to. But Kyler Murray is the QB 10. He's being drafted 73rd overall, according to Fantasy Pros PPR ADP. Okay? 22, Murray missed some games. He had a grade 2 sprain of what was it? Hamstring, and then then he missed. That was 21, I think, because in 22 he actually tore an ACL, and typically ACLs are a 9-month injury. You're back in 9 months, but you don't gain full confidence in the leg for another 9 months. So 18 months till you're back to what you consider normal. He took 11 months to get back on the field. I mean, I don't know if it was just more severe, if the doctors didn't do as good a job, but it took 11 months and he just wasn't that good when he got back on the field. So I looked at what he did pre-injury. He averaged 38 and a half passes per game. He averaged 6.6 rushes per game. That was pretty much pre-injury Kyler Murray. After the injury last year, he dropped about 5 passes a game. He was averaging 33.5 and 5.5 rushes, but he was much less effective in those. So he's also 5'10". I just don't like short quarterbacks. The Drew Brees is 6 foot tall. Okay. And he's a short quarterback. Doug Flutie's, they can splash, but I don't think you get long-term results from short quarterbacks. That's why I like Bryce Young, but I don't trust 5'10" quarterbacks. Hard to see over trees. It really is. So that's mine. I do expect to get heat from this. I really do. Hey, JC. Hey, Sniper Mel. We got people in our chat, Mace. I would also like to know who you've got, Gladys, at running back.
Okay, so running back was the hardest for me because the person I chose, there are really good reasons why you would pick him. Josh Jacobs. I
love him. You're killing me.
Oh, wow.
I have no Josh Jacobs in any draft that I've done so far. And here's the thing. Okay, so first I'll go with the positive. Last season, Jordan Love threw to his running backs like the 8th most time. So they do, and like 60% of those were first reads. So it's part of their anatomy to do that. However, the running backs were like 12th in target rate or target share. So they're getting the passes, but they're not making most of it. Jacobs I went to his, because he had, like last year's, you can't count it, where he was with the quarterbacks he was with. So I went to his 2022 stats where he was running back 3. He was running back 3 with an 11.8% target share, which means that he had most of his fantasy points scored on his 340 carries and 12 touchdowns. LaFleur has come out and said that he wants to institute a running back by committee, which means that Jacobs is going to be sharing time with Lloyd if he gets better, and then I think Dillon is still there. I would much rather wait on Rachaad White, who I know is going to get the lion's share in a PPR or half PPR of the targets. He's like got a 12.8 target share in his last 3 years. If I wait, my return on investment is going to be better than Jacobs, even though in there they have so many good, Green Bay has so many good wide receivers that I think that the running backs that share that 60% is going to drop off. He's not going to. Jordan Love had his first half of his season was trash, and that's when most of the dump offs occurred. Once he got acclimated and he went through that crazy back end of the season where he was throwing multiple touchdowns and like 2 interceptions, the running back went down. The running back targets went down. I don't think Jacobs is going to be able to get the targets needed to sustain his running back 12. He's coming off the board as the 12th running back. I think that there are better running backs after him. Rachaad White, for one, I would wait for. Although I do zero running back strategy, so I would wait probably longer than that.
I love that.
I actually like Jacobs this year, but it's because I think he's in a much better offensive line situation.
That's true.
And Jacobs, he has performed on the ground admirably with bad offensive lines. So I like him this year. I'm worried about Rachaad White, but you raised some really good points. I got to say, Tipp, are you on her side or are you drafting Jacobs?
You know what? Gladys came in and brought the heat. She talked about CJ Stroud, which we will talk about that a little later. Then she says Josh Jacobs, because I think a lot of people are forgetting about Josh Jacobs. A lot of people in the drafts that I've been doing, they leave him for the third. I've seen him go in some drafts in the 4th round. And if he is a running back that Gladys talked about, the zero RB theory, where typically you wait till about the 5th or 6th round to get a running back. But if you see somebody like Josh Jacobs there and you've got a formidable wide receiving core, then he could be somebody who could, I think, do some damage on your team.
If you take him in the 4th round, are you going to look to try to get Marshawn Lloyd a little bit earlier than you normally would?
Either him or AJ Dillon. Everybody, look, this is preseason. This is a training camp. They are all saying, look, they the coach speak. Bob Harris talks about it. And one thing that came out the other day is Matt LaFleur said AJ Dillon is in the best shape of his life. Like you hear that. You hear that this time of year. It's fun. It's fun to talk about. It's fun to tweet or write about. So I don't hate the call. I think Josh Jacobs is going to have a focal point in this offense, and it's a good offense, and he's going to have opportunities in the red zone. And I think he's a touchdown scorer. He's got a nose for the end zone. AJ Dillon should have a nose for the end zone, but he really doesn't. At that big game, he really doesn't.
He's not on your side, Gladys. He didn't want to say that, but that's what he's saying.
So you're telling me that you wouldn't wait for Zamir White, who has like that backfield all to himself and a worse I love Zamir White. I know, right? I would wait for Zamir White.
Guys, I had to bring this up. I'm a Raiders fan, right? Yeah. I love my Raiders.
Wait a minute. I want to know who your running back is so that Gladys can tear you up.
Yeah. Well, mine is Kyren Williams. And I had to
tell the people why yours is Kyren Williams.
I loved Kyren Williams. Before the draft, I loved him. I was like, man, this kid can really do some work. He did great work when he was healthy last year. They didn't, after Kyren Williams, it was kind of like they didn't know what to do, the Rams. They went after Darrell Henderson Jr. They even had Royce Freeman on the team. They didn't know, they couldn't figure it out. So what do they go and do? They go and get who Greg thinks is the best running back in the draft, and Blake Corum.
Yeah,
I would maybe pump the brakes on if he's the best or not, but it speaks to me because what Blake Corum does is he has a nose for grinding out yards. He's not a big guy, but he has a nose for grinding out those hard chunk plays. And if you look at the Rams offense, the Rams offensive line is pretty decent. It's not a bad offensive line. They already got Puka. They've got Cooper Kupp. So the thing is, I don't think Kyren Williams is going to be bad at the beginning of the season. As the season goes, you're going to see a situation where it could become a funky committee where you're going to start being like, man, I've wasted a first round pick on this guy, or maybe a second round pick on this guy, and he's just not producing. So if you are a Kyren Williams owner, I'm not big on this, but you might want to handcuff him with Blake Corum, or try to make sure you get somebody else in near that range, because I just see a situation where Sean McVay, who you never know what he's thinking, and I saw the report that I saw what he said today, that he couldn't wait to see Kyren Williams. And I know all the glowing reports are going to be coming out in the next day, if they're probably already out right now. But I'm just very leery on him just because they got Blake Corum. And I think that they looked at a situation where they don't want to be in a bad scenario like they were last year when Kyren Williams got hurt. And hopefully he doesn't. But if he does, Blake Corum could take over.
Do you have any exceptions to his argument, Gladys?
My only exception is because Blake Corum came from Michigan, and Michigan wasn't a pass first team. We don't know Blake Corum's ability to catch the ball out of the backfield. We do know that Matthew Stafford doesn't throw to running backs much, but when he did, 70% of those throws went to Kyren Williams. So if I'm playing PPR and I know that Kyren Williams is getting 70% of whatever Matthew Stafford is throwing to the running backs, I'm going to stick with Kyren Williams. I don't have Kyren Williams. Honestly, I don't have any shares of Kyren Williams, and I don't intend on getting any shares of Kyren Williams, but I just thought I'd be...
Okay, it's closed.
Hey, she was kind to you. I'm going to tell the audience the truth. The reason he went with Kyren Williams is because in our pre-show discussion, he thought I was going to go Kyren Williams because I love Blake Corum. I think he's bigger, faster, and more elusive than Williams. I think he earns that starting job before the end of the year. And Kyren Williams is 193 pounds. And that's why I went with my running back, who is Devon Achane. I think Achane at 188 pounds, you look at what he did last year. Well, let's see where he was drafted. I want to get it all right. He's RB7, drafted 24. So right at the end of the second round, he's going too rich for my blood for a guy that missed, 5-6 games last year? I just don't trust 200-pound backs, sub 200-pound backs. This is a tough game. These guys, these linebackers, 240, 250, trying to take your head off. And all it takes, right now, they don't feel in Miami that Achane can handle the load. Otherwise, they wouldn't be going with a 30-year-old Raheem Mostert. Is he 33 now, I think? An old man taking a lot of the load. And they drafted a kid that's 210 and runs a 4.3 40 in Jalen Wright. Now, Jalen Wright does have to be able to hold on to the ball. His reputation coming out of college is he's a fumbler. He's got to take care of that. But if he takes care of that, I can see him eating into the touches of Achane and Mostert and becoming more of that feature back. And especially if Achane goes down, which I don't predict injuries, but I got to tell you, 188 pounds running back who missed 6 games. And if you look at his per game averages, he had 3 games before his injuries where he was top 5 for the week. That's good. That's great. But then look after. He had 1 starting week after the injury, just 1. So I'm sorry, he is not a guy that I want on my rosters anywhere, nowhere. And if you take Devon Achane, I'm telling you, you got to handcuff him with Wright, because I just don't trust. Once you get to 30, the drop off is instant. Okay, some people carry it, but and Mostert wasn't overly used as a younger back, so he doesn't have the wear and tear. But I got to tell you, I like this Wright kid, and Achane is not on any of my rosters.
Gladys, what is your thoughts on that? Because I will give mine after yours.
I I mostly agree. Like, I think HN is going way too high. Like, if I could get him in the later rounds, I would get him, but he's going way too high for my blood.
No, you guys are both right. I mean, last year he totaled 12 touches per game, which is not bad in this day and age in the NFL, where most teams have multiple running backs. But this is the thing: if he would have played all 17 games last year, he would have had 200 touches. Again, not bad, but he didn't. He didn't. And then not only that, they bring in the Jalen White situation. And when you bring in another player that can run, that is built for speed, that team is built for speed, you still have Raheem Mostert. We cannot ignore Raheem Mostert. I was on Twitter. It's one of the guys, I think it was PPR Tips. He thinks that Raheem Mostert can still score 10 touchdowns. He scored 20 last year. He still thinks he can score 10 touchdowns. So the situation with Devon Achane is it could be a really crazy three-headed committee where you just don't know where you're going to be getting any of the points. And again, we all spoke about it. It's about the value. And right now he's going too rich for all of us. So I agree. I don't, it's not that I don't like Devon. I love the talent because the dude is a walking home run or a running home run, because when he gets the ball in his hands, he can take it to the house anytime. But in this NFL, you gotta be wary of that. So yeah.
Oh God, Mace says Mostert is the guy. Is still great call, Greg. Mostert scores touchdowns because who else do they have? They're not going to do a quarterback sneak with a guy that has so many concussions.
Yeah.
Okay. And 188 pounds. Sorry. You're going to see Jalen Wright take some touchdowns from Mostert this year. Gladys?
Yeah.
Wide receiver is my most controversial call. Who do you got?
Wide receiver was my hardest call because, quite honestly, in the top 12 of the Fantasy Pros ADP for half PPR, I agree. I would draft all of them. But again, I'm drafting under a zero running back strategy. So I want them. I had to go down to 15. Brandon Ayuk. I would not touch Brandon Ayuk. I wouldn't touch Brandon Ayuk if he wasn't disgruntled or whatever he is. But in that offense, that offense is based on yards after carry. Deebo Samuel, crazy yards after carry. I know he's in the top 10. George Kittle, crazy yards after carry, top 10. CMC, crazy yards after carry. Brandon Ayuk drops like the bottom, like he's like 18, which isn't bad. But in that offense, it's not the greatest thing ever. And him, 7 receiving touchdowns, going 15. I need double-digit touchdowns, and he has not had double-digit touchdowns in the last 3 years. So why am I drafting him as a 15th wide receiver when, I can go and get, like, I don't know, Mike Evans is going after Brandon Ayuk, and I know Mike Evans is red zone threat. I know he's going to get, I know that
1,000 yards every year.
Yeah, exactly. Double-digit touchdowns. Cooper Kupp is going. DJ Moore is going. DK Metcalf. All these guys are going after Brandon Ayuk, and all these guys are red zone threats, big guys who their quarterbacks depend on. So I am not touching Ayuk this year.
Before I go to Tipp, Mace is from the San Francisco area, and he's in the chat. So I got to ask Mace, if Brandon Ayuk goes somewhere else, which is still possible, it's not as likely as it was earlier, is it Cowing or is it Pearsall that steps up to the wide receiver too? So Mace, if you can answer that.
Pearsall.
What's that?
I want it to be Ricky Pearsall. That's why I want Ricky Pearsall.
Yeah, I've heard really bad things about Pearsall and OTAs, and I heard good things about Cowing. That's why I'm asking. Pearsall has the draft capital, definitely, but I just don't know. And Mace agrees with you. He says it's Pearsall. So that'll work for you. Who do you got on your wide receiver naughty list? Yep.
Oh, wow. Oh, naughty list. Okay, Greg. Gladys talked about zero RB, and I'm really big on the zero RB theory as well. So it was a little difficult to talk about wide receivers, but I'm going to talk about this one, and it's Chris Olave. And I like the talent. I think he's a good player. The thing is this: when you have Derek Carr as your quarterback right now, and you bring him onto a new system. Now, don't forget, guys, I'm a Raiders fan, so I know about Derek Carr. When you bring him into a new system, it's always a slow process. It was a slow process last year, and you have Clint Kubiak who's coming over to this team because they needed to get rid of Pete Carmichael. So it's going to be another slow process. And you add to the mix Rashid Shaheed, who is a home run threat, a really good wide receiver, a good player on the team. And another guy that I'm really talking about, I've been talking about, I know JC's been talking about him as well, is A.T. Perry, who I think is the direct replacement for Michael Thomas. So I think that Chris Olave could be one of those guys. He's not a real big touchdown guy. He's averaged about 4.5 touchdowns per season in the 2 seasons that he's played. But touchdowns are fluky. He does get the yardage. He does get the catches. And they did go up last year. But I just think that that's about where we're going to see him. I don't think that we're going to see much more from him. And him being the number 11 wide receiver, again, I'd rather go with somebody like Mike Evans, who's going to give me that touchdown upside. I'd rather go with somebody like Jalen Waddle. I'm really big on Jalen Waddle this year. I think that he can make another leap. He's already made a leap, but I think he can make another leap in that Miami Dolphins offense. So I'm just leery on Chris Olave. Again, as my number 1 wide receiver, no way. I would be okay if he was my number 2, my number 3 for sure, but not my number 1, and that's where he's going right now. So I'm out on Chris Olave. What about you, Greg?
Didn't he matriculate at Ohio State?
Yes, he did.
So
yes, he did.
From my perspective, I'm with you, buddy. I'm with you. Get rid of all them Buckeyes. Get rid of them all. So Gladys, do you have any comments on his Olave pick?
I actually like Olave this season. I think Olave has the deep threat. Olave is the deep threat that no one else on that team is. Rashid, I think, is going to be doing a lot of kick returns. And so I think that's going to take him out of the mix a little bit on the field for regular time. Rashid would be my second choice there. But I like Olave. I think that his ceiling is so high because his talent is so good. There is that Derek Carr. I would feel much better if Jameis Winston was tossing him the ball, but he's no longer there. So
that's a scary statement. That's a scary, scary statement. Jameis Winston had a chance to start, and he just looked really bad. Isn't Spencer Rattler there?
Yeah, he is. Yeah,
I think I'd feel better if Spencer Rattler was
there. There was a game where they brought Jameis Winston in. I think Carr got hurt, if I'm not mistaken, and they brought Jameis Winston in. Olave had 0 points at that. He had nothing. He had nothing at that point in the game. Very little, if anything. And as soon as Jameis Winston got in there, he scored. He started. He found Olave. He kept throwing the ball to him because that's what Jameis Winston's going to do. He's going to find that target and he's going to chuck it to that guy. And I just don't think that's what Derek Carr. He's never been that guy. I don't think he's going to do it again this year. That's one of the reasons. It's not so much the Chris Olave. It's the player that he's playing with too. You got to have both of them together, and it's going to be really tough for him again this year.
Are you guys ready for the outcry?
I'm ready. We're ready.
Okay. I'm saying don't draft CeeDee Lamb. Okay? Now, bear with me. There's reasons for this. CeeDee Lamb was amazing last year. He scored over 100 points more than he had in any of his first 3 seasons. Last year was his 4th season in the NFL. He has shown a steady increase in production each of his years. Well, I think he went down his second year a little bit, but his first 2 years were roughly the same, and his TDs have increased. And then last year was pretty amazing. But there's ADP 2. You got to take him with the first or second pick in the draft. And history will tell you that since Antonio Bryant, no wide receiver is repeated as the wide receiver 1. None in fantasy. Antonio Bryant had 3, 4, 5 good years that he strung together. Randy Moss did it. I don't see CeeDee Lamb as a Randy Moss or an Antonio Bryant, who a lot of people didn't realize how good that kid was. So CeeDee Lamb to me is just way too rich. And okay, you guys are zero running back drafters. I'm old school. People draft hero running back. Hero running back seems light to me. I draft stud running back. I want 2 or 3 running backs in the first 5 rounds. I really do. Now, because of tight end lack of quality tight ends, I'm going to take a tight end early. But I'm not opposed in single quarterback leagues to wait until the 5th round to get my quarterback and loading up on running back, a tight end, and then going after wide receivers. CeeDee Lamb had an amazing year, but the thing I'm looking at is CeeDee Lamb had one of the top years in terms of targets of all time. Now, there is room for growth. The most targets any player has ever gotten was Marvin Harrison. I think 2004, 2005, he had 205 targets. And CeeDee Lamb had, I think, 181 last year. So there's room for growth. I just don't see it. And with somebody already picking Dak as the quarterback to drop down on, if Dak's gone, who's throwing the ball to CD? Also, CD's holding out. We don't know when he'll show up. We don't know what kind of shape he'll be in when he shows up. I just think with the history of now, realize the last 2 years, the wide receiver 1 from the previous year got injured, and you can't predict injuries.
Right.
But you can go back to the years, I think 2018 was the last time, 2017, 2018, Antonio Bryant, the last time a wide receiver repeated. And I think that if you're going to take a player 1 or 2 overall, you're taking them over. My 2 favorite draft picks in an early draft are CMC and Bijan Robinson. I'd much rather have one of those 2 than CeeDee Lamb. So I'm not drafting CeeDee Lamb anywhere. I expect it to be a controversial decision because, like you two, there's a lot of people out there that think zero running back is the way to go. I look at the fact that there are maybe 40 running backs worth drafting, maybe 40. You got a 12-team league with, you want 4, 5, 6 running backs on your roster. You've only got 40 viable players, and then you're going to have a couple that come up because of the propensity of committees. It's 40 and not just 32. Whereas with wide receivers, there's 96 on the field most days, most plays, because most teams run 3 wide receiver sets. Mm-hmm. That's 96 on the field when all the teams are playing. There's just a lot more receivers to choose from, so I'd much rather take a chance on getting a sleeper wide receiver than a sleeper running back. Kyron Williams is a unicorn. You don't get that, okay? Puka Nacua happens every year. Some receiver comes out of the woodwork every year. So I'm out on CeeDee Lamb, and I'm ready. Go ahead, Gladys. Tear me up. Why is CeeDee Lamb going to be on your rosters?
Okay. They got no one else. Jake Ferguson and CeeDee Lamb's all they got. And Jake Ferguson and CeeDee Lamb was pretty much all they had last year. Tony Pollard was not the guy that they thought he was going to be. The contract talks for both Dak and CeeDee are slightly worrisome. I'm not worried. These are professional athletes. I'm not worried that he's going to come into training camp if and when he signs like out of shape, because I think that it's their job. And I think that CeeDee Lamb is wired such that he knows that it's his job and he will be in shape. If you're talking about a offense that was in the top 5 in scoring, was in the top 5 in plays per game, and their defense is going to be somewhat suspect, so they're going to have to chuck the ball to others stay in the game. Jake Ferguson and CeeDee Lamb are who they're going to throw the ball to. So I'm not picking CeeDee Lamb as my first pick, but if he is going like right after CMC in most drafts, and I'm not that high. I've not been that high in picking, but I would have no problem in taking CeeDee Lamb, knowing that Dak Prescott trusts him and Dak Prescott's going to throw to him, and CeeDee Lamb is going to be on receiving end in the red zone a lot.
If you have the 101 pick, who are you
Yes.
taking?
Ugh, I hate the 101 pick. If I had the 101 pick, I'm probably trading back. But if I can't trade back, I would take probably Amon-Ra.
Oh, I love you. I do.
No, he's the most
See, now I would
consistent.
take
Yeah.
CMC. I would take CMC. There's no doubt in my mind. If I have the 1 pick, I'm taking CMC. And if I have the 2 pick and CMC is gone, I'm taking Bijan. I'm taking a running back there because of the scarcity at the position as opposed to the wide receiver. But
Well,
I love Amon-Ra. He's my favorite Lion. I like Jahmyr Gibbs. I like all the Lions, but Amon-Ra, if you just watch this kid in an interview, 2 of my kids were born in Germany. He was born in Germany. His mother is German. He speaks German. I don't. I speak a little bit. He does an NFL style football camp for kids in Germany every year.
I loved him out of college. I thought that he would surpass his brother. I thought that he would be he came in with a chip on his shoulder because of where he was drafted in the first place. That list of people that went ahead of him, I'm like, he's just going to ball and he's going to keep balling regardless how much he gets paid. Plus, I think Detroit has like 3 games outside this year.
Yes.
And you mentioned his brother, and I got to tell you, I think that most fantasy football players have no idea who Equinemius is. Yeah. But he's a wide receiver for the Bears.
Yeah.
So, but that's Amon-Ra's brother. So yeah. Okay, Gladys, wrap us up with the tight ends.
Okay, so my tight end that I would not take, regardless, is going number 3, and that's Trey McBride. Trey McBride, from weeks 1 through 9, he had 1 game double-digit fantasy points last year. He was on the field for less than 70% of the snap share, and he ran less than 70% of the routes. Then Wilson went down, Hollywood was Hollywood, and Dortch went down. When there was no one else, those last 3 weeks, like 8 through 18, he averaged 14.95 fantasy points per game, which is good, which is really good for him. But he had no competition. He was on the field for I think an average of an 80 or something percent snap share and an 80, 70 or something percent route run. But he was the only one there. Now they have Marvin Harrison Jr., Zay Jones. They got Zay Jones.
Mm-hmm.
Wilson is healthy. I don't see him getting the snap share that he got, and the route running participation that he had. I don't see him sustaining that type of production with all the competition that he's going to have. Now, if those guys go down, yes, I think Trey McBride is the last man standing again. Yeah, he will probably be tight end top 5. But I'm not drafting him as a 3rd when I can get Mark Andrews, Dalton Kincaid, Kyle Pitts, George Kittle. All these guys are going after him. Are you kidding me? Evan Ingram had a 90%, and Calvin Ridley's gone. He had 90%. He was tight end 3 last year, and he's going 5 spaces lower than Trey McBride. That's insane.
I'm with you. I'm with you on that. And quite frankly, I'm not as worried about MHJ as so many people are, and we'll get into that with my pick because I despise the term generational talent. And I really like Michael Wilson. I think Mike Wilson and Zay Jones are pretty good receivers. So I'm with you on that pick. How about you, Tipp? What do you think about her?
I got a question for Gladys though, because that's intriguing because so far for tight ends, Trey McBride in the offseason has been the tight end darling. Now it has changed a little bit. You got the Travis Kelce contract situation that raised some eyebrows. You got Sam Laporta. But do you feel, Gladys or Greg, either one of you can answer, do you feel that, yes, when Trey McBride was the only option, do you feel that can build on chemistry and they can build upon that for the following year, for this year? because we know that Marvin Harrison Jr. is there. We get it. We know Michael Williams is there. Greg Dortch. They've got some weapons there in Arizona. But do you think that those times when those guys were missing last year, do you think that could help Kyler Murray and Trey McBride with that chemistry, and they could start with that chemistry at the beginning of the year?
No, because I think that Kyler Murray has been practicing with Marvin Harrison Jr. I think that's where he's trying to develop chemistry. I think that young quarterbacks use safety nets, and I think if Marvin Harrison Jr. is even a portion of what people think they are, what he thinks they are, like, I think that people forget that we're talking about actual people too. So what we hear, they hear.
Right.
So Kyler Murray hears that Marvin Harrison Jr. is a generational player. Kyler Murray wants to succeed. So Kyler Murray is going to lean on the person he thinks is going to help him succeed the most, Marvin Harrison Jr. And I'm not, like, if I can get like an Evan Ingram or a Jake Ferguson or even a Kyle Pitts if Kirk Cousins is healthy, later than I can get Trey McBride and like use that pick on a better wide receiver, the chemistry thing I don't think works, because that the only reason they have chemistry was because no one else was on the field.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? He has other options now, and he knows he has other options now.
I got to tell you, I'm with Gladys here. Okay. I know it's your Raiders and everything, but you heard what I said about Kyler Murray. I'm not sure that offense is going to be much of anything this year, to be perfectly frank. I think that they're going to run the ball, to try to protect as much as they can. I think it's going to take MHJ at least 6 games to adjust to the coverages in the NFL. And what happens if Murray goes down again? He's missed games the last 3 years. So I'm with you, the Gladys. But okay, Tipp, your tight end.
So my tight end is David Njoku. Guys, I talked about him in the offseason. The discrepancy between him playing with Deshaun Watson and playing with Joe Flacco was real. Last year with Joe Flacco, he had 6 catches per game, 78 yards per game, with 4 touchdowns in those 5 games. So he killed it. He won people fantasy leagues in those games because it was towards the last part of the year.
Because he had an NFL quarterback.
Before that, when he was playing with Deshaun Watson in those 6 games, he averaged 4 catches for 38 yards and 1 touchdown in those 6 games. So what happens this offseason? Joe Flacco gets shipped off to Indianapolis. That would have been ideal if Njoku followed him to Indianapolis. I think Njoku could be the number 1 tight end. But he didn't. He stayed in Cleveland. He's with Deshaun Watson. And what did the Cleveland Browns do this offseason as well? They went and got Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy is another guy who's going to take some targets away from David Njoku. Jerry Jeudy is a guy who, when healthy, is a really good route runner, something that Deshaun Watson needs because he needs to, his accuracy. He likes to throw the ball downfield. He doesn't like to dink and dunk as much. He likes to throw the ball downfield, a la when he had Will Fuller and he had Nuke Hopkins in Houston. So the thing is with David Njoku, yes, he will have some games where he does pop off, but then he's going to have a lot of games I feel that he will disappear because Deshaun Watson just doesn't have eyes for him. He will even look for Elijah Moore at times when they're in the middle of the field or intermediate routes. And right now, David Njoku is just going way too high for me. He's not he's number 11 as far as tight ends go, but I would much rather have Evan Ingram, a Kyle Pitts. I would even rather have a Pat Freiermuth, who I know is in a Pittsburgh, the Steelers. Gladys is a Pittsburgh fan, but I know that Russell Wilson doesn't necessarily throw to the quarter or to the tight end position as much. But look at what Arthur Smith does for tight ends. Look at what he did for Johnny Smith. So, Greg, we're going to go to you. Who is the tight end that you are avoiding?
Well, before I do that, I want to make a comment. I did read today that Kirk Cousins has received medical clearance to begin practicing. So he will be on the field for the camp this starting tomorrow, probably. So mine, again, I told you, I absolutely hate the term generational talent. First of all, generation applies the best in a 25-year span. And how do you know that? That's right. He's holding up his Raiders thing because he knows
Better not say it, Greg.
Brock Bowers is not a generational talent when last year the tight end generational talent was a kid named Mike Myers who went to the Raiders. You got a position that garnered all of 73 targets split among 4 tight ends last year. Rookie Myers, who was generational, got 40 targets. You're not going to be top 10 with 40 targets. You're just not. So I know Tipp is going to tell me, oh, he's going to run out of the slot. Oh, he's going to be all over the field. You don't know that. You don't know that. You haven't seen them line him up. You don't even know who his stinking quarterback is going to be because before the show, you were telling me, boy, I'd love it if Minshew got the start. Me too. I think he's a better quarterback than Aiden O'Connell. That said, who's number one on the depth chart right
Aiden
now?
O'Connell.
Thank you.
But rightfully so.
We don't know who's going to get the targets, how they're going to be split. I really don't envision him getting more than 70 targets by himself, which in itself would increase the tight end share to about 100 targets. Now, understand that last year, 626 pass attempts out of the Raiders offense. I think Raiders are going to run, pound, and everybody's worried about the Los Angeles Chargers giving away the passing game. They got Justin freaking Herbert. Harbaugh likes to win. They're going to run the ball, but you can bet Herbert's going to throw the ball 35, 40 times a game. I can't say that Minshew or O'Connell will throw the ball 35 times a game. I can't say that. And if they don't, again, 70 targets will not make him a top 10 back. And where is he going? He is the tight end 10, number 97. Now, 97 is a reasonable place to get a tight end. But me, tight end is such a rare position. I want a top 5 guy. Okay? When Scott Fishbowl, which does, it's very tight end premium, understand that. I was one pick away from getting Kelsey, and I had Mahomes as the quarterback I wanted to stack. When Kelsey went one pick before me, I did not punt the position. I went with Dalton Kincaid, who I think will be the number 2 tight end this year, simply because who else is Josh Allen going to throw to? Now, I like Curtis Samuel there. People like Shakir. Bottom line, I think the top receiving threat in Buffalo this year is not going to be Keon Coleman, who's having a good camp. It's not going to be Curtis Samuel. It's going to be their tight end, Dalton Kincaid, in my opinion. We'll see. But go ahead, Gladys. Tell me why I'm wrong.
My only pushback to that is that now Luke Getsy is the OC there, and he made Cole Kmet. Had 91 targets last year. He had 82.3% route participation rate. I believe that the Bears ran like 2 tight end sets, like in the top echelon of the league, and now he has 2 tight ends where one can reasonably play out of the slot and one can play a traditional tight end. And that is what Getsy is known for. If he can make Cole Kmet fantasy relevant, I'm pretty sure that he can make Brock Bowers fantasy relevant. Regardless, I mean, and Cole Kmet he finished tight end 8 with Justin Fields and what was that other kid's name? I don't even know. The other kid that came in with for Justin
Tyson Badgett.
Thank you. I forgot that last night too. That was one of the questions. Tyson Badgett. Sorry, Tyson Badgett. No disrespect. I mean,
that's why I have him on the show. Because I wouldn't have been able to answer that. Whoops, that way.
Way. So I mean, I think that the change in OC, the change in philosophy of how they're going to play, there's a reason that you draft Brock Bowers, even though you have Michael Mayer. It's because you're going to run 2 tight end sets and you're going to run your offense through those tight ends. And
We
like I
had
said,
that. We had that discussion.
We did.
We
I'm
did.
sorry.
No, 12 personnel. I think that you'll see the Raiders in 12 personnel more than normal. But I'm saying 25% of their offensive plays will be 12 personnel. I think to get him enough looks to be understand me. If you're not top five tight end in most years, I'm not going to draft a tight end till the 10th, 12th, 13th round, because if you're not top five, there's no real difference between number 6 and number 22. There's just really not. Yeah, I mean, over the course of the year, it might be 50 points between 6 and 22, but Kelsey historically has put up 100 points more than the number 2 tight end. So I want whoever's number 1, 2, or 3, because they make a difference in your lineup.
You also, during fantasy playoffs, though, the Raiders are playing indoors every single game, every single week.
Know. That's
every
good
single
know.
week. And by then,
who's their quarterback?
Minshew will probably be quarterback by then.
You think?
I hope.
We don't know. We don't know.
Greg. I am not going to use that G word that everybody likes to use these days. I'm not going to do it. But this kid,
use it.
No, I'm not, because I'm not a big. I don't. All of the NFL players. If you're good enough to make it into the NFL, you are
You're a generational talent.
You may not be a generational talent, but in your family, you're a generational talent. Like you.
That's right.
You are generationally good. You have changed your family's outlook forever.
Yes, you have.
So, but I will say this. The Raiders, it's almost like he fell into their lap, because I think the Raiders had Brock Bowers going in the top 10. I know a lot of draft experts had him going in the top 10, I think, to the Jets.
Yeah, quarterbacks surprised people. The number of quarterbacks taken.
The quarterback situation, that surprised a lot of people. And when the Raiders saw that they can get this guy and partner him up with Davante Adams, who is, if not the best.
Yep. Davante got 175 targets.
No, I get it.
180 targets.
I do. I think that Davante Adams is still
Jacoby Myers is going to get 100 targets.
Jacoby Myers is a good wide receiver. And I don't disagree that you guys are saying that they're going to run the ball, because they're going to try to establish the run. Their offensive line's not the greatest. Remember, I am a Raiders. Yeah, I am a Raiders fan. So I am, but I'm realistic when it comes to them. And I know where their strengths are. And their strengths are going to be just chunking the ball. That's what they're going to try to do, and play good defense. Their defenses should be. We saw what their defense did last year, and it should be even better with Christian Wilkins in there. So now I think they're going to try and establish some type of run game, but they are going to utilize Brock Bowers. They're going to utilize him all over that field, and that's where I think that's going to set them apart. Because yes, Jacoby Myers is there, and Jacoby Myers is a phenomenal wide receiver to have on your team. But I will say this. This Brock Bowers kid, he's too talented for them to just say, we're going to give him only 70 targets. I don't know how many targets they're going to give him. Yes, Davante Adams is going to get 150 plus targets. That's easy. That's no question at all.
Jacoby Myers is going to get 110.
I think that Jacoby Myers could get in that range, but I do think that Brock Bowers, I think there is enough for them to throw the ball enough for Brock Bowers to get that. I do understand the Michael Mayer situation, but I think that they're going to run 12 personnel, and that Luke Getsy, that situation right there. Cole Kmet is a good tight end, but he's no Brock Bowers. I'm sorry.
All right. Hey, so we're at the end of the show already. This is flowing. Typically we're searching for things to say at the end of the show. And I wanted to talk to you, Gladys. Are you going to the you're going to be at the expo, right?
No, I'm not. I acquired a dog. Someone dropped the dog off on me, and she is not a people person. And so I can't leave her in a kennel, and I can't bring her with me. So her and I and my other dog, we're just going to sit here and look at all the photos of people at the
Well,
at
I'll
the
tell you
expo?
what, I've talked to Bob. I'm going to be doing filming and
Oh,
pictures,
cool.
and Tip's gonna be with me, so I'm gonna try to get Tip to do some filming.
Okay.
We
Where can
gotta
I
get
find
her
those?
here because she's got people coming for her.
That sounded like an ambulance, Greg.
It
All right.
was an ambulance. That's okay.
Gladys, thank you. I also want to say something. If you're watching this live or later on, go over to the YouTube channel, Sports Affiliation YouTube channel. Like and subscribe, especially subscribe. We're pushing 350 subscribers, and I know we're trying to get it up over that 350. I'd like to get it to 350 million, but I don't think we can do it tonight. But like
Hey,
and
sky's the
subscribe.
limit.
Like and subscribe. Visit Gladys. Follow her on Twitter. Gladys is a great human being. I'm really sorry that you're not there. We got Sir Football in the chat. Hey, if you like weird, strange fantasy rules, check out Sir Football. He's got some new games coming out.
Yeah,
We interviewed him and he was great. And some of his ideas,
crazy.
I like the idea of wizard mode. I really like, think about that. Wizard mode for fantasy football. How could you not like that? How could you not be intrigued? So
you know
anyway,
what, Greg? We need to time out. We need to change your name to Mr. Wizard.
No, there was a
remember
Mr.
Mr.
Wizard.
Wizard back
There
in
was
the
a
day?
Mr. Wizard that used to go to fantasy football conventions.
Oh,
He'd wear
really?
the big hat. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow. That's funny.
If you look at my video from the 2004 convention, there's a picture of a guy drafting with a big Wizard's hat. That was Mr. Wizard. I'm not stealing his name.
Hilarious.
Just not doing that. He actually had a cape, a blue cape, that kind of a robe type thing, that I believe had stars and moons on it too. But I
Nice. That's
I
nice.
mean, he went all in. But Gladys, thank you so much.
Yes,
for
thank you so much.
Can we get you back on during the season? Do you think? I'd like you to do.
Yeah, of course.
I love your insight, and we're going to during the season we're going to do studs to sit, but it's a weekly sit, and and you only have to choose one, not one at each position, and we're also going to do bench warmers to start. So
Okay.
those are going to be two of our segments during the season. That's a new segment for us. We'll have to highlight that one sometime. But next week we have is it Bob next week? August 1st, I think we have
That is
Bob
next
Long
week.
next week.
Yes.
So Bob will be on the Sports Affiliation two nights in a row. He's on Game Changers Wednesday night, and then we've got him. We're going to talk to him a little bit about the expo. They're going to cover that on Wednesday. We're going to talk to him about scoring differential. People don't understand why a top tight end is more important than a top quarterback. And because a quarterback will outscore a top tight end. But the scoring differential between the quarterback 1, 2, 3, whichever one you get, and the tight end 1, 2, 3 is so great that it's more advantageous to take the lower scoring player. So we're going to discuss that and consistency, because Bob Lung literally wrote the book on consistency in fantasy scoring, and you can buy it on Amazon. So Gladys, thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on. It was fun.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we hope for. That's what we hope for. JC, take us home.